my gosh, you guys, I can't believe it. We have made it to episode 100. I say we because you guys are a part of this with me. Your investment into me and this episode, or this podcast, have made it what it is today. So in celebration of this major milestone, listen, the average lifespan of any podcaster is 7 episodes. Y'all, we're at 100, and you guys have been a part of that. So I want to give you an inside peek, behind the scenes scoop on what has been accomplished that you probably have no idea. And this podcast reaches so much further than you would think. So let's jump in. Stay tuned at the very end. Instead of life hacks, I'm going to give you all the details how you can join our celebration giveaway for $100 worth of Java with Jen merch, coffee, a book, a devotional from last week's guest. It's going to be so much fun. Let's dive in. Hi, and you're listening to Java with Jen with your host, Jenilee Samuel. I did a lot of digging, and I'm so encouraged after pulling all these stats from my show. I'm just so encouraged and blown away over what the Lord has done and how you guys have helped thrust my podcast into the listening sphere of the world and the nations, and I'm so, so grateful. So as I read this, I'm really saying thank you to y'all. And I'm saying thank you to the Lord. So listen, I've been podcasting on Java with Jen since August of 2018 technically, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I only was posting an episode like once a month. So really every week I've been posting since May 2020 with a couple of season breaks or holiday breaks. And so since then, so it's about 2 years really. And so we're at 100 episodes in 2 years. And we have almost 27,000 downloads, which is pretty awesome. To me, that's kind of just huge. I just love it. I know there's podcasts that do way more than that, and I don't really care. I'm like thrilled by it. And 27,000 downloads is actually pretty great for a podcaster. A lot of people don't make it past episode 7 and maybe 100 downloads. So that's huge. Also, you guys don't go anywhere. You got to stay tuned till the end. I'm really excited for this giveaway because I love giving things away. It's so much fun for me, and I am really excited. And it's going to be pulled from the merch store and from my coffee line. And then also last week's guest, Rebecca Hargraves, is donating her book and her devotional for a mama out there who it's called The Lies That Moms Believe and How the Gospel Refutes Them. So it's super empowering book and devotional, all packaged together in the giveaway. Super excited. Okay, so we're at 27,000 downloads. I've been podcasting since May 2020, and we're at 100 episodes. Now, we are listened to, I just counted today, we are up to 70 countries. What? 70 countries. I've only set foot in 5 countries, or 4, or no, probably 5. And so that excites me. The United States represents 82% of my listener base. And so the other 18% are international. The top 5 countries that listen to Java with Jen are the UK, Spain, Romania, Germany, and Canada. And then we have hit the charts in New Zealand. We were ranked 92 in the religion and spirituality category. In Romania, I was ranked number 14, which is kind of amazing. In India, number 157, and Nigeria, 125. Now, for some context, to hit the charts in any country, you have to be in the top 200 episodes in your category, or 200 podcasts. My category, religion and spirituality, is the number 1 most saturated category ever. There are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of podcasts in my category. So for me to be in the top 200 is a major deal. But like with Romania, number 14, that was huge. And not so small of a world. Romania, I have a connection to all of these countries, which just shows the principle of sowing and reaping. Romania was my first missions trip. And that's where the Lord really, really showed up and rocked me in an amazing way. New Zealand was my second missions trip, and that is where I just spent a lot of time there ministering. I saw a lot of miracles and stuff like that. That's also where I decided to go to Bible school. India is where my husband is from, And then Nigeria, my connection to Nigeria really goes back to a sweet girl that I discipled for over a decade, and she just has my heart. And she's moved on. She lives in New York now, but I've always had a soft spot for Nigeria because of her. And so I just think it's neat to have a connection to all these countries. So on iTunes, we have 29 reviews. They're all 5-star reviews. Reviews are different than ratings in that reviews is where people say their thoughts about the podcast. I love this podcast. It's the best thing ever. Ratings is where they just go and hit how many stars, like how they would rate it on the scale of stars. And so ratings and reviews are different, but you get stars for both. And so my reviews, I've got 29 of them. And my ratings, we have 130 5-star ratings. Now, let me just say, shame on iTunes. They have been removing my stars. They have removed 213 of my stars. I don't know why I've lost them, but they removed them. So really, I would have 343 ratings, which is a big deal. Because the higher your ratings, the more ratings and 5-star reviews you have, the more the algorithm populates you to the top of a search engine or a search feed when people are looking for podcasts to listen to. So the more ratings and reviews, the higher you turn up. So the more easily your podcast can rank and gain momentum and gain more listeners and basically reach people. So that's a big deal. So for any of you guys who have left me ratings or reviews, I want to tell you thank you so much. It means the world to me because I do this podcast for my listeners. I just do it for my listeners. I love my listeners. And so getting to hear your thoughts really just impacts me. This one was from Clint Hamilton, says the podcast is possibly the greatest podcast I've ever heard. The detail, the insight, absolutely worth your time, wonderfully presented and wonderfully edited. This is truly a high watermark for the art of podcasting. Oh my gosh, that was so sweet. This one says 5 stars isn't enough. I loved it. It takes you there, easy to follow along with, and will keep you guessing what's going to happen next. Please do more. That was from Nakul Grover. This is from Marsha Plissette, empowering and refreshing. She says, I love listening to Jen talk anytime I get the chance, and especially anytime I have a long car ride. I make sure to catch up on her latest podcast. Jen always has so much love and wisdom to share. I'm grateful to have this podcast to turn to when I need a refreshing message to listen to. Musical Melody, she's one of my sponsors, actually. She says, so much wisdom for life. My go-to listen while on my daily commute. So much wisdom is packed into each episode. It's super uplifting content and super practical. And lastly, this one is from Kay McCauley, says, I love the realness of these chats. Great chats, great tips. Spotify told me that dozens of my listeners listen to my podcast more than any other podcast. That just made me go, oh, bless their hearts. I'm so grateful. I've had 41 guests on all my episodes. Some of those guests are Christina DeRosa, an actress who's played in Blackish, Bad Moms, a number of other things. She's, in fact, I had a friend over here the other day helping her with her business, and she knew Christina. She was like, oh, she's one of my favorite actresses. I was like, oh, really? So yeah, she was on my show, shared about how she gave her life to the Lord. It was awesome. Manuel Reyes, the husband of Angela Johnson, the comedian who does Bon Qui Qui and the nail salon, he was on my show, and that was really awesome to have him on. He used to be in the Group 1 crew band, and he was also in the movie with his wife, Mom's Night Out, and so that was a great interview. I've had my husband on here and Jamie Lynn Wallnow, Lance Wallnow's daughter-in-law. Jamie Lynn has a passion for nurturing and growing the prophetic in younger women as well. So those are some guests I've had. I've had a ton more. Honestly, all of my guests have been my favorite. It sounds so cliche, but it's true. It just is true. My podcast is on 18 platforms. Okay, did you guys know there's that many platforms you can listen to podcasts on? I was like, what? Like iHeartRadio, Pandora, Anchor, which is where I record, like Stitcher, Podbean, Podnews, Wisdom, Listen Notes, and Repod.io. I found some. I was like, what? I never heard of these guys. So anyways, yay for being on lots of platforms. So the demographics of the show, my average age listener is 18 to 44, which is awesome because that's who I'm trying to target. My female to male ratio is 80-20. So 80% women, 20% male. But kudos to you guys who are listening because all my anecdotes are built for women, and I have a female voice, and kudos to you for listening and hanging, and I just appreciate that you're here and that you're part of my listener base. In fact, I'd like to hear from my male listeners. come to think of it. Some of them I have heard from. I would like to hear from you guys. Send me messages on Instagram. Let me know what you think. Let me know, actually, I should do an episode for the fellas, actually. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to do an episode just to answer your questions. Okay, the top states that is listened to Java with Jen is Texas. No surprise there. California, New Jersey, Arizona, and Georgia. So that's pretty cool. Lastly, as far as demographics, I was very pleased to recognize Planet Earth is my top listened to planet. Yes, I know that may be a little surprising. We're not on Mars yet. That is the goal. Not gonna lie, I was pretty surprised they had that in the demographics option. Maybe it's a joke. I don't know. But I was like, it literally showed me my rankings on all the planets. I'm not listened to on any of the planets besides Earth. So I was like, what? I have had the privilege of being a guest on 10 other podcasts so far. One is Addicted to the Climb. I'm Testimonies with Tiffany. My friend Tiffany Tombury has a powerful podcast sharing all these things that God does. It will build your faith, y'all. And then Journey of Ruth podcast was another one. She's another friend of mine, and she's all about the power of discipleship. And so she brings people on who have spoken into her life that have a lot of wisdom to give. So that's a really rich one as well. Some of my favorite moments, I've had some people ask me like, hey, what's been your favorite thing about podcasting? Because it is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. And that is not a complaint. I really love doing it. It's definitely not a complaint at all. But it is work. You know, I have to be organized. I have to plan ahead. I have to create the episode, record the episode, edit the episode, and then publish it, put it on my blog. I write up the summary notes, I do hashtags, put it on social media. So there's a lot of work to it. But one of my favorite moments was when I created my coffee line, because I've loved coffee my whole life, y'all. I've loved it. And I had the idea last year, going into season 3, I was like, we need to do something different. I need something fresh. And I was like, that just makes sense that I should do coffee. Well, this kind of links to one of my other favorite moments where I received a letter from one of my listeners. Her name was Rosanna, and her and her husband became sponsors of the podcast as well shortly after this. But when they sent me a letter, they sent me a bag of coffee. And it was coffee that they produced. And I was like, oh, I didn't know they had a coffee line. So she sent me that as a thank you and shared a testimony that someone in their family, she'd been praying for someone for their marriage for a long time. And when she heard my episodes on marriage, where I had a couple of guests on, Andy and Pat, who they have their own marriage ministry now, but they have helped me and my husband through some very, very dark moments. And so I had them on my podcast. And so this listener, Rosanna, reached out to them and said, hey, I've been praying for the marriage of someone in my family. If they were open to it, would you guys be able to connect with them? So they did. They had a couple of phone calls with them. Long story short, he rededicated his life to the Lord and was able to repair his marriage with his wife. And it was just, I literally cried reading this letter. I was like, thank you, Jesus. There's fruit coming from doing this podcast, because I don't want to just fill the airwaves with my voice, I want fruit to come from this. And so hearing from them was so powerful. So that just made my day alone. Well, then later, when season 3 came around and I was like, I should do a coffee line. How the heck do you do a coffee line? Then I remembered they make coffee. And so I reached out and said, would you guys be interested in helping me have a coffee line? Like maybe you could make 2 flavors, and they're the Java with Jen flavors, and I can sell them online. And they were like, yes, we'd love to. And so that's what we did. Now, I don't make any money from the coffee line. Actually, I still buy coffee if I want extra coffee from them. They're so sweet and gift me coffee every month. But if I want extra, I buy it, and because I want to support their ministry. And anything you guys buy from their coffee line actually goes back into their ministry. So it's not like a business for me, but it is a cool extension of the podcast that I love. And then following that was the merch line. The next month, I launched a merch line as well. There was a lot of learning involved in all that. And it was fun. I love being able to design sweatshirts and t-shirts and cups. And I feel a little bit like a fashion designer without the real work. And so maybe one day I'll make a dress or something. I don't know. Anyways, so those were a couple of highlights. Another highlight for me was when Candace Cameron reshared my posts on Instagram. And then when Lana Vauser reshared my content and then friended me on Instagram. And we've developed a little bit of a relationship there. And those were a couple highlights for me. Lena Vosser is a prophetic voice that I've been following since the pandemic started, and she's out of Australia, and her prophetic words have just like nailed me between the eyes every single time. They've just been so refreshing and encouraging. So if you don't follow her, go check her out. So those are some of my highlights. So people ask me what are some of my favorite episodes, and I was looking through them all, and I was like, oh gosh, I like them all. I can't pick. I like them all. So, but I did pull out some of them that just kind of strike me a little more between the eyes. One of my favorites was with Michaela Waters, episode 68, and it was where we talk about raising your kids to hear God's voice. One thing that she said, and this was probably one of my quotes I remember the most, she said, your greatest goal as a Christian mom should be to teach your kids to hear God's voice and grow dependent on Him, because they'll outgrow their need for you, but they'll never outgrow their need for God. And I was like, yes. Yes and amen. And that was something she pulled from an author. I think she'd read their book. And so that was just so powerful. Your kids will outgrow their need for you, but they'll never outgrow their need for God. So that was really impactful for me as well. Otherwise, episode 9 is probably personally one of my favorites. It was one I recorded. It's called For Mamas Who Miss the Lord. And I love that one because that came out of a time when I was processing having little kids and having no time to spend with Jesus, and feeling like dealing with resentment towards my kids because I felt like they were stealing my relationship with the Lord, because I could not find any time alone to nurture my relationship with the Lord. And it was just a moment where the Lord spoke to me and changed my thinking and really freed me. It was so powerful. And when I shared it on Facebook all those years back, it was such an outpouring of a response from women. I was stunned. And so I shared it again a few years later, same response. So I decided, hey, I should make this a podcast episode and get it in front of more people. And so I did. And I always just have a tremendous healing, weeping response from people that it just really touched their heart. So if that's you miss your relationship with the Lord because little children consume all your time, go listen to that episode. It's episode number 9, way at the beginning. And then another episode I loved was episode 8, where that's the one with Manuel Reyes. And I loved it because I had reached out to a friend who prays for my podcast and said, could you guys be praying that the Lord connects me to a celebrity? I want to have a celebrity guest. That just sounds really fun. And I would like to just connect with someone of influence. And so she said, sure, we'll start praying. Well, I had been following Manuel Reyes on Instagram once I found out he was Angela Johnson's husband, and he was one of my favorite characters in the movie Mom's Night Out. And so I saw on his stories he was asking questions about podcasting. So I just started answering some of his questions in messages. And so we messaged back and forth, and he asked some questions. And then towards the end, I said, hey, so funny story, it's always been my dream to have you and your wife on my podcast. Would you be interested in being a guest? And he was like, sure. He goes, I can't speak for my wife, but I'd be happy to be a guest. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I said, okay, amazing. He was my first guest to have like over the phone. So I had to figure out all this stuff, like how to record a podcast over the phone, and like I put together a letter so I looked all professional, whatever. Anyways, I probably handled myself so like a novice, but whatever. He was gracious, and we had an incredible interview. It was like over an hour. Had a great time. Another one that I love is episode 13, Learning to Hear God's Voice. This is one that I get the most feedback on. I recently sent this to some new believers that are really wanting to grow in the Lord, and they said it was so helpful, especially having all the scripture in it. So if you're interested in learning to hear God's voice, it's actually a part 2. Episode 12 and 13 go together. It's part 1 and part 2. Episode 18 is my #MomFails episode, and I did that as just a lighthearted, let's switch it up, and we shared a bunch of mom fail stories that wrote in and sent in stories, and so I had 2 guests with me that day where we share these stories and just literally crack up laughing the whole time. So episode 18, if you need a good laugh, go back and listen to that. The marriage ones was episode 34 and 35. The boundaries episode, which is episode 46, that's a life-changing episode. That's a game changer. If you have any unhealthy relationships in your life, you need to listen to the boundaries episode, and then you need to go get the book because it's really good. Episode 67, okay, I'm almost done, I promise. Episode 67, I share about what it's like being a pastor who got into fashion and how the Lord did that. It's personal to me because I share my story. It took me 67 episodes to share that story, to finally get to it. But I do finally share it, and it was very personal, and I love that it's one of my more popular episodes because that means people are appreciating my story as well. And then lastly, episodes 95 to 97, I had Charlie Jordan on my show, and he is the bassist for Kim Clement. He was a prophet that I followed for years, and Kim Clement was very, very pivotal in me growing in the prophetic as a young mom. So it was really personal for me to have Charlie Jordan, who traveled with Kim for 20 years or 25 years, to have him on the show. It was very prophetic. It was very charged, lots of cool stories. So those are some of my favorite episodes. Honestly, I have a gazillion of them. They're all my favorite. I have 100 favorite episodes. But those are some highlights. If you want to go check those out, I know I hit them kind of quick, but just go browse through all my past episodes and see what grabs your eye. So something that I've learned from podcasting that I feel like we all could walk away with wisdom from, is that everybody has a story. Everybody has a testimony, and everyone has wisdom to offer. I've had guests on my show who I didn't know them from Adam, but I let them share their story. I listened to what God has done in their life, and I'm impacted by it. And it really showed me, like, literally, I should never dismiss anybody as being able to have a voice into my life, as long as they have fruit, good fruit. But everybody has a story. You have a story. You have a testimony, and you have wisdom to offer. So that's one thing I've learned. Another thing is, what I think is a fail or a flop episode will oftentimes bring in rave reviews from listeners because it impacted them. So what that teaches me is to never underestimate that what just offering what I have to give and letting the Lord make it fruitful, just don't underestimate that dynamic. Like, so many times, it just goes to show that if there's an anointing on something, it doesn't have to be perfect. Do we want excellence? Yes. I always strive for excellence, but my definition of what is good or what might be needed is probably often different from the Lord's. And sometimes when I think it's a flop because maybe it went a different direction than I expected, or I said things that I was like, I wasn't planning on saying that, I think a lot of times that's the Lord ordering my steps and ordering my words because he knows what the listener needs. And so I have really learned to just trust and not be overly critical, not be overly skeptical of what I put out, but just leave it in the Lord's hands and let him make it fruitful because he's good at that. Lastly, I'd say, I've learned a lot, but one more thing is doing what I'm doing out of faithfulness and not for results, because growing anything takes time, and growing anything is going to have discouraging moments if we're looking for results. But when I stop and put my focus on, Jen, why are you doing this podcast? You want to be faithful with your gifts. You want to be faithful to teach the word. You want to have a voice into people's lives, to bring the word of God to them in the way that only I could do. I'm unique, and there's a unique way that I bring the word. That's just the mantling God's put on my life. And so I can acknowledge that without being like feeling arrogant about it or anything. It's just the way God's built me. And so I want to be faithful with my gifts. I also want to pour into people and help people. And when I keep that vision in front of my eyes, like even from the life hacks section, I do life hacks because life hacks help people. They're not spiritual, but they're helpful, And so I just want to help people. And so when I keep that purpose before me, it really does help me remain encouraged. And not be discouraged if I hadn't hit 100,000 downloads yet, or whatever. So what blesses me the most in podcasting is my listeners, by far. If I didn't have listeners, I would have stopped this thing a long time ago. Well, obviously, no one wants to put stuff out if there's no listeners. But if I didn't have relationships with my listeners where you guys are talking to me and I'm listening to you and you're giving me feedback and you're leaving reviews and you're letting me know your thoughts and you're asking questions, and some of my podcast episodes literally came out of y'all's questions. And so some of the episodes wouldn't even be, and some of them come about after I've had conversations with some of you wonderful, beautiful people, and it just gets the ball rolling in my mind and heart. And so I create an episode out of some of the revelation I've had from that conversation. And so hearing your hearts and the fact that you guys trust me to speak into your head and heart space, that's really humbling for me. And it's so incredibly humbling when one of my listeners decides to put their finances into the show and to support the show, whether that's a one-time gift or a monthly sponsorship. That is so humbling and so empowering and just inspires me and terrifies me at the same time, because I'm like, oh God, I better make sure that I'm living up to this, what they're not what they're expecting, but what they're investing into, got to be a good steward. I want to be a good steward. That's what I mean. And so anyways, but it's just so humbling, but it's super helpful. I'm not going to lie. I have about 5 or 6 actual sponsors, regular sponsors. The fact that I know that money is coming in every month gives me some flexibility in marketing, in doing a giveaway. That's what's going to pay for the giveaway, or buying stuff for my office up here to help me with creating the show and stuff like that. It really is helpful. It has also helped sponsor my Compassion International child, because that's something I took her on. I pay for her, but it's something I wanted to do as part of the podcast as well. So some months the podcast will pay for her sponsorship, just so that it's something that, the podcast is also investing into. And so I'm so grateful. And it is my prayer that the Lord will bring on more sponsors with my show. I don't push it really hard because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm asking for money or whatever. That's not the point. But just I've noticed that my sponsors who come on, they receive a little differently from the podcast, just even spiritually. I think that investment, where you sow, you can reap, and so I think that investment of honor causes you to receive differently from the podcast and from what's taught and what's released through these episodes. And so anyways, but it's just such a blessing. So my listeners are the biggest blessing to doing this. And then the other thing that blesses me is that we live in 2020 where I can do this, where we have the resources and the platforms to get my voice into the nations. I never expected it would be this easy, this simple. It's not easy, but this simple. And I thought I'd have to be like Elisa Bevere before my voice would be in the nations. And so I'm just really grateful for the time that we live. So what are some of my goals for this next year? We're going to go into season 4 here. And so some of my goals are, I'd like to hit 100,000 downloads in season 4. We're just going to put that out there. I'd like to see more nations added to my list of countries listening. There's 194 nations in the world, I think, or somewhere around, maybe it's 205, somewhere around there. And I'm at 70. So that's amazing. And I would love to add more to it. I would like to chart in more countries, be in their top 200 in my category. I would love to start speaking places. I would love to start booking speaking gigs. So if your church is looking for a speaker, feel free to throw my name in there and let's talk about it, because I would really like to do that. I love it's different talking in a group of live people than talking on a recording. I love both, but it is different, and I would love to dig into that even more. I've done that for years, but I would love to do it even more. I would love to get reports of people getting saved, filled with the Spirit, growing in Jesus, and learning how to hear God's voice from listening to my show. That is always a goal. That is always my primary priority. I'd love to explore ways to pull in discipleship. Oh, I would love to do this. So podcasting is one thing, getting those episodes out there, but I'm very relational. So I really want the interaction with my listeners. So I'm trying to think of ways to pull in more discipleship beyond episodes. So maybe that would be like a live Zoom with listeners every couple weeks or every month or something. Or doing a Bible plan in YouVersion with my listeners. I'm open to ideas. If you guys have any ideas, throw them at me. Because I would love to pull in a deeper level of discipleship as an aspect of this show, because I feel like discipleship is God's heart. And so I really want to invest in you guys in an even deeper way. And then I would just love to continue to be faithful with what the Lord puts in front of me. So I want to give thanks to my sponsors. Melody Hinson, Lori Lott, who's my mother, bless her heart, always supporting me since childhood. Rosanna and Gustavo Sanchez, they are the ones responsible for the coffee line. Samantha and Christian Awanagwa, and then Deanne Landry. I want to say thank you to all of you for being sponsors. You guys have no idea, and I know some of you, it is a movement and an act of faith to continue to sponsor and give to my show. And that humbles me more than anything. And I pray for my sponsors. I pray that the seeds you sow into me and into this show would be multiplied back into your lap, because I very much believe in sowing and reaping and harvesting. And where you sow honor, you will reap wealth. And that's what the Bible says. And so I just want to say thank you guys for being sponsors. And if anyone wants to be a sponsor, you can always do that at patreon.com/JavaWithJen, or you can do it straight through Anchor, and they have an option to do monthly giving there. Or you can send a one-time gift through like Venmo. I have options, so if you want to do that, just let me know. But I think those options are all listed in my link in my bio on Instagram at JavaWithJen. So go check that link out. Otherwise, a little announcement. I think I'm going to do what I do every year and take a summer break for the month of June and July. However, watch on social media, because I will still be active. I'll be highlighting episodes that you maybe have missed. Maybe those favorite ones, maybe I'll highlight those. So it's a good time to kind of catch up on missed episodes, but it gives me a chance to kind of take a breath, pray into any fresh direction for next year, make a plan, get some recordings done. It's just kind of keeps me healthy with the recording so I don't get burned out. And but stay active on Instagram, because I will still be on there. And of course, I always reserve the right to throw up an episode just because I feel like it. So make sure you're subscribed to the show. That way, if I do any surprise episodes in the summer, you'll see it. You can also make sure you're following me on Instagram, because I'll put the word out there. And you can also sign up on my email list, which I don't know how to tell you to do that at the moment, but I will let you know on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram so that you can sign up on my email list. Okay. Lastly, giveaway time. Here's the details around the giveaway. Are you ready? Okay, so for this giveaway, you are going to... Okay, here's what it includes, first of all. Come follow me on Instagram, because I will be putting all the information about the giveaway on my Instagram. If you're not on Instagram, make an account just so you can come follow me. And then I know who you are. And then we can communicate more easily. Oh, look, see how all the love revolves around Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but to be honest, I'm not very good going on there. So it's not super reliable. Otherwise, come follow me on Instagram. I will be posting the winner on there. But I will be giving away $100 worth of Java with Jen merch and coffee and a book and devotional, like I mentioned before, from Rebecca Hargraves, called Lies Moms Believe and How the Gospel Refutes Them. I think I'm going to do a vote on my stories of what merch needs to be in the giveaway. So join the giveaway. Here's the rules. It's going to be open for 24 hours only, and I believe I'm going to do it tomorrow, Thursday, when the episode launches, through Friday. And so you're going to want to go to javawithjenpodcast.com and follow the instructions. Basically, you're going to join my email list. Look, we figured it out. You're going to join my email list there. I've just got to put it all together. And then secondly, you're going to take a screenshot of a favorite episode, or whatever episode you're listening to, or of my podcast episodes, whatever. Take a screenshot of it and then throw it in your stories. But you need to tag me, Java with Jen, and tag 2 friends in it so they see it. And then, of course, in it, put a little thing that says, encouraging your followers to come listen to Java with Jen as well. So you're joining my email list, and then you're posting in your Instagram stories, and that is how you will be entered into the giveaway. Now, if there's not a lot of people in the giveaway, your chances are really high. But if there are a lot of people in the giveaway, it just makes it more fun. So if you want to up your entries, then what you can do is tag more people. And if you post it in your feed, like your static feed, your actual Instagram feed, then you can get extra entries for that as well. And so there's ways to get extra entries. Tag more friends and post it more times, and then you'll get extra entries for the podcast or the giveaway. So there's the instructions there for the giveaway. I'm super excited. Listen, I wear my Java with Jen shirts all the time. It's going to be a good giveaway. See, I'm getting all happy just giving things away. So make sure you do it. And don't forget, this summer, we're going to be taking a break for June and July. I'm going to take episode breaks, but stay tuned just in case there's any surprise episodes that get dumped on there. And make sure you're following on Instagram. You guys, thank you so much for walking with me. But I have really developed some sweet friendships with my listeners, with my sponsors who've begun to just open their heart up and let me in and let me hear their story, share how an episode impacted them, where they were in life. I've had the opportunity to pray with listeners and talk listeners through some things like marriage issues, or guys, it's just a privilege. It's just a privilege and an honor. And I just want to say thank you for walking with me. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Thank you for leaving reviews and ratings and sponsoring, sharing with friends. All of those things, you have no idea how encouraging and how much that touches me. And I'm grateful. It's just rewarding when I feel like it's making a difference. Thank you guys for walking with me. I'm excited to see who wins this giveaway. Check things out on Instagram. Follow me there so we can stay in touch. I love you guys. This is me signing off for season 3, but come follow me on Instagram because the giveaway is live and you want to be a part of it. So I'll see you guys over on the IG. Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. For those of you who've rated or shared this podcast on social media, thank you. Reading your comments and reviews always means so much to me. Listen, let's stay connected. Come follow me on Instagram at Java with Jen, where you can follow the latest and say hey. It's a really great way to stay in touch. Many of you have also asked how you can support the show. You can make donations through the Anchor app or on Patreon, or of course by sharing, rating, and reviewing on social media and iTunes as well. Your heartfelt feedback always reminds me why I do this. Until next time, remember, you will fulfill your greatest destiny one day at a time.